When you look at the world today, it's easy to forget how fragile everything really is. We live in cities, we build our homes, we plan our lives as if the ground beneath us could never betray us, as if the sky above us would always stay calm. But every once in a while, nature reminds us who's really in control, sometimes gently, sometimes brutally. And the stories I'm about to share aren't just statistics. They're echoes of moments where everything changed in an instant. I've always believed that the most terrifying things aren't the ones we see coming, but the ones that strike from nowhere. Like the wildfires that sweep through forests with almost no warning. You think of fire as something loud, violent, but large wildfires often move in eerie silence. One shift in the wind, and whole neighborhoods vanish under waves of heat and smoke. In the last century, tens of thousands of lives have been lost to fires that swallowed entire towns faster than anyone could run. And the scariest part? Many of those people never saw the flames, just darkness, and then nothing. Tornadoes are a different kind of monster. I grew up hearing stories about how the sky can turn a strange shade of green right before one hits. People talk about the air becoming unnaturally still, as if the world is holding its breath. And then, out of nowhere, that deafening roar, like a freight train charging straight at you. They're unpredictable, unforgiving, and shockingly fast. In the blink of an eye, houses become splinters, trees become missiles, and whole communities are left staring at empty foundations. 25,000 lives taken over time, by walls of wind that last only minutes. Avalanches always fascinated me because they feel like the opposite of a tornado, yet they kill in the same brutal, sudden way. You stand on a quiet mountain slope, snow sparkling, air crisp, and beneath your feet, the whole hillside might already be cracking apart. One sound, one vibration, sometimes even just the weight of one skier, and millions of tons of snow come crashing down. It's hard to imagine how something so beautiful can suffocate you in seconds. 100,000 lives gone, many of them never recovered, buried in cold silence. And then there are the landslides and mudslides, disasters that feel almost alive. There's something deeply unsettling about Earth that suddenly decides to move. Whole hillsides liquefy, houses slide away like toys, and roads disappear under rivers of mud. People describe a low rumbling sound, as if the ground is growling. It's strange. We walk on the earth every day, trusting it completely, and yet it can betray us just as quickly as the sky can. 150,000 lives swept away when the earth itself turned against them. Heat waves and cold waves are quieter tragedies. They don't look dramatic. There's no explosion, no sound, no destruction you can film. But they kill more quietly than almost anything else. I always thought of heat waves as just uncomfortable days, until I saw how cities become ovens, especially for the elderly and the vulnerable. Cold waves break people the same way, quietly, slipping into homes at night, taking away breath before anyone wakes up. 200,000 lives over the years, lost not to storms, but to temperature alone. Lightning. That one always felt personal. I remember as a kid, sitting by the window during thunderstorms, watching bolts tear the sky open. It felt magical, almost beautiful. But lightning is one of the most underestimated killers on Earth. A single strike carries more energy than you can wrap your mind around. It hits randomly, without pattern, without mercy. Hundreds of thousands of people, especially in rural parts of the world, never stood a chance. One moment you're working in the fields, the next, the world goes white. Volcanoes, though. Volcanoes feel ancient. They remind us that the Earth is alive from the inside out. When a volcano erupts, it's not just an explosion, it's the planet breathing fire. I've always imagined what it would feel like to stand near one of those massive eruptions from history, watching the sky turn black at noon, the ash raining like snow, the ground trembling. For the people who lived through eruptions like Tambora or Krakatoa, it must have felt like the end of the world, and for many, it was. 250,000 lives burned, buried, or suffocated under mountains of ash. And then we come to one of the most terrifying forces on the planet, tsunamis. There's something uniquely horrifying about the ocean rising up against you. People who survived often say the same thing, that the sea suddenly vanished, the shoreline pulled back so far you could see the ocean floor. And then, the water returned as a monster. Walls of water taller than buildings, moving faster than cars, erasing everything in their path. 500,000 lives taken by waves that give no second chances. But even that pales in comparison to tropical cyclones, hurricanes, typhoons, the giants of the atmosphere. These storms aren't just big, they are entire worlds of wind and water spinning across the ocean. Some of them have wiped out nearly entire coastal regions, killing hundreds of thousands in a single night. You hear stories of people tying themselves to trees, hoping not to be swept away, only to watch the tree itself rip from the ground. 2.5 million lives lost. And many of the worst storms didn't just destroy buildings, they erased generations. Earthquakes are different. They strike without warning. No dark clouds, no strange sky, no sign at all. You're drinking coffee, working, laughing with your family, and suddenly the ground ripples like water. Buildings twist, floors collapse, roads split open. Earthquakes don't give you time to run. They simply decide, in one violent moment, who lives and who doesn't. Nearly 3 million lives taken by the shaking of a world we thought was solid. And then, storms. Not hurricanes, but the endless spectrum of violent weather that has plagued humanity since the beginning. Massive monsoons, deadly windstorms, collapsing structures, entire fishing fleets lost at sea. The numbers are staggering. Around 5 million lives lost to storms that came year after year, century after century. When you add up all those storms, all those nameless victims, the death toll becomes almost unimaginable. But nothing, absolutely nothing, compares to floods. Floods don't just happen, they transform entire landscapes. I remember seeing footage of places where the water rose so fast people barely had time to climb onto their roofs. In the worst floods in history, millions died as rivers swallowed cities whole. The 1931 floods in China alone killed more than any single natural disaster ever recorded. 8.5 million lives lost across history to water that refused to stay in its banks. And finally, famine, the slowest, cruelest disaster of all. Unlike storms or earthquakes, famine doesn't kill in seconds. It kills over months, even years. Entire populations weakened, children starving, families forced to leave their homes in search of food that never came. It's a disaster caused not just by nature, but often by politics, drought, war, and failure. More than 10 million human beings lost in famines of the 20th and 21st century alone. 10 million stories that ended not with a bang, but with silence. When you put all of this together, it's overwhelming. 13 forces of nature, each different, each devastating, each responsible for unimaginable loss. And yet somehow, humanity is still here. We rebuild after the fires. We rise after the floods. We return to shores hit by tsunamis. We plant crops again after famine. Maybe what defines us isn't our ability to avoid disaster, but our ability to stand up afterward. And as much as these tragedies remind us of nature's power, they also remind us of our own resilience. Because behind every statistic is a community that refused to disappear, a family that kept going, a world that continues to push forward no matter how many times it has been shaken, drowned, burned, or frozen. If there's one thing I've learned from studying disasters, it's this. Nature may be powerful, but humanity is stubborn. And that stubbornness is why we're still here.